On February 26, 2023, what began as a normal night out ended in tragedy. That night, 46-year-old Letha Humphrey went to a party with her husband. Hours later, she was gone. Police received a call about an assault near the Edwards Avenue off-ramp on Interstate 580 in Oakland. When officers arrived, they found Letha suffering from a gunshot wound. But the most chilling detail came from her husband himself. He admitted to dropping her off alone on the side of the road after an argument. What looked like a tragic fight spiraling out of control soon revealed something far darker. Investigators uncovered a disturbing pattern of violence that stretched back decades. Letha had unknowingly married the same man who had once killed a member of her own family. Now he had killed her too, leaving her body on the road. This case is haunting, and it echoes another story we covered: the murder of 25-year-old Jeremy Cables, who fought for her partner's release from jail, only to lose her life to him soon after. That story is linked at the end, and the similarities are chilling. Now, let's step into the life and final days of Letha Humphrey-Macaun. Letha was more than a wife and mother. She was an entrepreneur, a woman with dreams, and someone who filled every room with warmth. Friends described her as radiant, nurturing, and always ready to lift others up. On social media, she often shared motivational posts about growth and empowerment, reflecting her passion for helping others. Still, her self-worth often seemed tied to her role as a wife. She frequently posted pictures with her husband, Nathaniel, showing moments of love and devotion. Yet, hidden between the happy captions were hints of struggle. Phrases like, "Love is hard but worth it," or "We fight, we grow." To many, it looked like a couple overcoming obstacles. But behind those words was a dangerous reality Letha couldn't escape. For Letha, being a wife wasn't just a role. It was her identity. She worked tirelessly to uphold the image of a perfect marriage. She believed love, loyalty, and dedication would hold her relationship together. But that dream would end up costing her everything. Nathaniel Macaun, 49, was the man she built her life around. But his past was darker than she allowed herself to see. Raised in Oakland in a working-class home, Nathaniel's father worked maintenance and his mother labored in a factory. On the surface, it was an ordinary upbringing. But underneath, his world was shaped by violence, drugs, and chaos. While Letha clung to hope, convinced he could change, Nathaniel's history told a different story. He had a pattern of reckless choices and destructive behavior, and by the time Letha met him, his violent past was already well established. In 1998, his name was tied to a crime that shocked even seasoned investigators. Nathaniel was implicated in the brutal murder of his brother's mistress, Yolanda Deadman. The family was in turmoil. When Yolanda threatened to expose the affair through letters, Nathaniel was sent to retrieve them. What followed was horrifying. Yolanda was stabbed, beaten, and shot in the head. Her 4-year-old daughter was left in the apartment, forced to witness the aftermath. Nathaniel's then-girlfriend later confessed that he admitted to the killing. Yet, despite the evidence and a near-unanimous jury, he escaped conviction. 11 jurors voted guilty. 1 did not, and that single vote spared him from being found guilty of murder. Nathaniel was sentenced to only 7 years in prison. But even that brief punishment didn't change him. When he walked free, it was clear he wasn't reformed. His violent history was brushed aside, and he slipped back into society as though nothing had happened. The justice system had given him a second chance, but he used it to continue the same destructive path. Back in Oakland, Nathaniel began a relationship with Letha. Despite everything in his past, he presented himself as a man who had moved on. In reality, he was still the same manipulative, violent figure, now hidden behind a clean slate. By 2017, Letha no longer kept their relationship a secret. She went public on Facebook, announcing Nathaniel as her partner. Friends and family knew his history, and Letha likely did too. But she convinced herself she could be different. She believed her love would succeed where others had failed. The red flags were there, but her desire to be loved, to be a wife, outweighed the truth of who he really was. What she didn't know was that the same man she wanted to heal, love, and change would one day end her life. On February 26, 2023, Letha and Nathaniel attended a friend's birthday party in Oakland. What should have been a night of celebration turned into something far darker. Witnesses say tension between the couple had been growing all evening. Fueled by alcohol, the arguments escalated and soon spun completely out of control. As the couple left the party, the argument only grew worse. Nathaniel later claimed the fight got so heated that he pulled over on 73rd Avenue and let Letha out of the car. According to his story, he then crashed his vehicle on 106th Avenue near Interstate 580 and walked home, insisting he had no idea what happened to his wife afterward. But investigators quickly realized his version of events didn't match the evidence. The timeline, the crash, his statements, none of it added up. What police uncovered was far darker. Authorities believe Nathaniel pulled over near the Edwards Avenue off-ramp on Interstate 580. There, he shot Letha and left her on the roadside to die. A witness later reported seeing a man standing over a woman, stomping on her as she lay motionless. The brutality of the scene was undeniable. By 1:30 a.m., California Highway Patrol officers arrived and found Letha dead from a gunshot wound. She had been abandoned in one of the most vulnerable places imaginable, by the very man who had vowed to protect her. Nathaniel, meanwhile, reported her missing. But given that he was the last person seen with her, investigators quickly turned their attention to him. His behavior raised even more suspicion. Instead of grief, he displayed anger about being treated as a suspect. He seemed more concerned with defending himself than mourning his wife. He even refused to acknowledge that her body had been found, as if denying the truth could erase his role in it. By this point, investigators knew they weren't dealing with a grieving husband. They were dealing with a suspect. Every word Nathaniel spoke, every move he made was scrutinized. Detectives collected evidence, interviewed witnesses, and documented his strange behavior. His deflections, his anger, his lack of remorse. But despite their suspicions, no immediate breakthrough came. For nearly 2 years, Nathaniel walked free. He lived his life as though nothing had happened, while Letha's family waited for justice. Behind the scenes, investigators never stopped working. They pressed forward, digging into his past, uncovering the violent history that followed him like a shadow. What happened to Letha wasn't a sudden outburst. It was part of a long, disturbing pattern of violence that had been building for decades. For a time, Nathaniel may have believed he had gotten away with it. But on January 2nd, 2025, his freedom ended. Authorities tracked him down at the Sky River Casino in Elk Grove, California. With a warrant in hand, they arrested him without incident. He was booked into Santa Rita Jail in Alameda County. For Letha's family, it was the first step toward justice, an arrest that had been nearly 2 years in the making. Nathaniel was held without bond, facing multiple charges: murder, corporal injury to a partner, and possession of a firearm by a felon. The charges reflected not only the brutality of his actions but also the ongoing danger he posed to society. His criminal history had always cast a shadow. Along with his conviction for voluntary manslaughter in the 1998 killing of his brother's mistress, Nathaniel's record showed a clear pattern: violent outbursts, substance abuse, and a family life marred by criminal behavior. His 7-year prison sentence for the earlier case had done little to stop him. Instead, it paved the way for yet another tragedy. Now, prosecutors have added special allegations that make him ineligible for probation and place him under California's two-strikes law. If convicted, Nathaniel could face up to 56 years to life in prison with no chance of parole. For Letha's loved ones, the trial represents more than justice in a courtroom. It is a chance to ensure the man who destroyed her life and devastated her family is never able to hurt anyone again. Her family, friends, and community continue to push for accountability and hope for a verdict that finally delivers the justice she was denied in life. The loss of Letha Humphrey-Macaun left a deep wound in her family, her friends, and her community. Her death wasn't just a tragedy. It raised painful questions about how a system failed to stop a man with a violent past before he could take another life. For years, Letha lived under Nathaniel's control, unable to escape the cycle of trauma in her marriage. When her life was taken, her community came together in grief and anger. Vigils and memorials were held to honor her memory, each one reflecting the warmth and compassion she brought into the lives of those who knew her. Her death was more than a personal loss. It was a loss to Oakland, a city already scarred by violence and struggling with the rise of domestic abuse. Letha's story became a painful reminder of what happens when love is mistaken for sacrifice, when loyalty turns into silence, and when warning signs are ignored. Alcohol also played a role that night, fueling the argument and lowering inhibitions, but it did not create Nathaniel's violence. It only heightened what was already there. His pattern of abuse, unchecked for decades, escalated until it cost Letha her life. Now, her family and community faced the long road of healing, carrying both the grief of her loss and the determination to fight for justice. Not only for Letha, but for every woman trapped in the same cycle of danger. Nathaniel's history of drug dealing, violence, and unchecked anger raised another painful question. Did substance abuse play a role in his actions that night? Over the years, his issues with control and rage only grew worse, fueled by drugs and the resentment he carried from past crimes. That toxic mix eventually cost Letha her life. Friends and family recalled how Letha stood by Nathaniel despite everything in his past. But those closest to her also saw the cracks widening in their relationship. The early warning signs of abuse were there, ignored, minimized, or explained away. Her murder is more than a personal tragedy. It highlights systemic failures that allowed a man with such a violent history to continue slipping through the cracks. His role in the brutal killing of his brother's mistress in 1998 should have been a clear red flag. Instead, it was downplayed, dismissed, or forgotten until it was too late for Letha. Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of her story is how her love for Nathaniel blinded her to the danger. Like many women in abusive relationships, Letha believed patience, faith, and devotion could change him. She convinced herself his violence was part of the past. In reality, it was a warning of what was to come. Her story reflects the painful truth faced by many women, taught to put relationships above their own safety. They endure toxic cycles, hoping love can heal what only accountability and justice can stop. Letha's tragic end is a painful reminder of what happens when love and loyalty overshadow warning signs. Her family and community are left to carry the emotional scars of her death. While Nathaniel's arrest brings a measure of hope for justice, it cannot erase the loss of a mother, sister, friend, and woman full of promise whose future was stolen. She believed she could change a man with a violent past. In the end, that belief cost her everything. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think the system failed Letha long before that night? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story engaging, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime stories like this one.